So, hi, welcome to Tom Talks 2. I'm not Tom, we had some technical difficulties, but today we are joined by the artist of Judge Dredd, Vampire State Building, and the titan of comics, the Walking Dead series, Charlie Adlard. Thank you very much for being on the show.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Pretend, Tom.
So, we would just start the show off. Are there any comics that you've read recently that you could recommend to people?
Well, I mean, aside from yours.
Oh, have you been reading our comics?
Well, I've read that. Well, obviously, you sent me a link.
That's
so,
right. Yeah.
I was very impressed.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Well, I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't impressed with you guys.
Thank you so much.
Comics I've been enjoying recently. Let me think. Well, I always say this. I'll say kind of the same ones, but it's always big. It's always good to big up ones that I kind of assume people aren't reading that much of. I've always been one of my favourite comics of recent. Well, the last how many years? 5, 6, 7 years. I don't know how long it's been going for now. Is probably Lazarus. By Greg Rucka and Michael Lark. I've always loved that book. That's one of it's one of those books you think, well, I was going to say it was one of those books where you think, why haven't they made a TV show out of this one?
Yeah.
But I know full well they've sold the rights, but whether it gets made, who knows? But I just think Greg's just done such a phenomenal job in world building with a book like that, and he's a great character writer. And Michael's artwork I've always loved, and the amount of work that goes into those pages is just mind-boggling. No wonder they've gone quarterly as opposed to monthly.
Right,
I couldn't believe they were doing a monthly book at the beginning. So I've always liked that. I've actually been enjoying recently a couple of books from Boom, which I've never really. Thing is, I don't really read that many comics. It makes it sound like I'm just taking lots of stuff from everywhere and reading loads. It's not actually. I tend to go to my local comic book shop, and Paul, the guy that runs it, sort of just tends to pull stuff and go, "You're interested?" And as an artist, you tend to get drawn to the art first. So, to be honest, if the art isn't catching my eye, I tend to, unless it comes with some serious recommendation from somewhere else, I tend to, put it down and pick up something where I see, obviously appreciate the artwork. So I got Folklords by Boom, which is Matt Kint and Matt Smith.
Oh yeah, right.
I've known of. I think I met him a couple of times, very briefly, in the States. But
is he a British writer, Matt Kint, or is he American?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I've met Matt Smith, and I know him very, very slightly, just because he was the original artist on a book I did called Astronauts in Trouble. He did the first 3 issues of that, which I seem to have a habit of leaping on something after somebody else has discarded it. But it's quite fortuitous for The Walking Dead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it worked out pretty well.
I did all right with that one. So I've known of him for years, and of course, there's obviously some other famous Matt Smiths.
I've heard of 1 or 2 of them.
And there's also the editor from 2000 AD who happens to be Matt Smith.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Very confusing. Cool. But I've really enjoyed that. I wouldn't normally pick up a kind of a fantasy book. It's not really my wheelhouse, so to speak, unless it's doing something really original. And this is doing something really original with that kind of story. So I really enjoyed that, and to be honest, and at the same time they published, what was it, Heartbeat by Maria Lovett, which was really good, actually. I was really impressed with that. Really kind of creepy, romantic sort of thing. It was just different stuff. And the thing I'm also really enjoying is a thing called Red Mother,
All right.
also by Boom. And I can't name the people that create that, but I just, it's my kind of horror story, which is just really creepy and really subtle, and you really don't know what's going to happen. You know, so for me, that's how I kind of like, you know, especially my horror. I like it in that kind of scenario as opposed to the in-your-face gore action type format. You know,
right.
Character stuff is always good for me, and this has got great character stuff, and it's just, I have no idea where this is going to go, and it's got some very, very beguiling imagery as well. So yeah, so it's kind of, Boom remarkably seem to really be acing it at the moment.
Some great recommendations there. Really got to say, yeah. Well, thanks for that. I'll definitely get onto those when we finish up.
Oh, cool.
So this isn't a question, but apparently you and Tom share the same birthday, which is a funny little coincidence.
Oh, right. Oh, August the 4th.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a bit before in terms of year, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. It's just a little funny little bit of tidbit.
Oh, right, okay. There you go.
This is a very hard-hitting question, so I hope you were prepared for this. So the question is, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Same as I have every day, literally every day. I'm a creature of habit. If you're really interested.
We're very interested on this show.
All right then, a big old bowl of muesli, actually, sounds very healthy, with some seeds sprinkled on top.
Oh, right,
berries put on top of that. Like fruit with my cereal.
Yeah.
It's a big old bowl, you know. And I do like, you know, strawberries, blueberries. So one thing I get really twitchy about if we start running out of stuff is berries. Right. I just love berries at breakfast.
I'm sure the sort of lockdown, you just ran out and just grabbed as many berries as you possibly could.
In my dressing gown, yeah. Oh, no berries.
So I'm assuming, I've
literally been having the same breakfast like that for years, you know.
Right.
Obviously, if I'm in a hotel or something, I might, be forced to have something different. But if I'm at home, that is my go-to.
So do you make your own muesli then from scratch, or is it
God, no, I don't. No, whatever brand and supermarket, I'm not.
Okay, obviously not sponsored by whatever random muesli. And so follow-up question, would you recommend that to other aspiring artists to have for breakfast?
Where's this going?
It's important questions. These are the hard-hitting questions that people need to know.
Hard-hitting questions, I do say breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
That's true.
I'm one of these people that wake up hungry. I always do. It's so weird because I know a lot of people just don't wake up hungry and they just go and have a coffee or cup of tea or whatever, or might struggle with a slice of toast. I'm always ravenous at breakfast, so that's why I have to have this quite substantial, So
interesting, very interesting. So I'm glad that's the hard-hitting questions out of the way now, though. So don't worry. The rest of the interview's down.
We can calm down a bit now, can we? Right.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So second question. Sorry. Is apparently you have a band called Cosmic Rays. We didn't know about this beforehand.
Apparently I do, yes.
Yeah. And you're still making music, we understand.
Yeah. Oh, incidentally, apologies that my wife's name keeps popping up at the...
Oh, don't worry, I'm sure people...
I speak.
It's not my name either, so it's fine.
That's true, yeah. So we're all under pseudonyms.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I've been playing drums since I've been about 16.
Right.
And it's very rare I've not been in bands, to be honest. So this Cosmic Rays has been going, how long? Easily like 10, 15 years. I've really lost count, in
Wow.
various incarnations. I am the only sole member that's been in every single incarnation, though. So I'm the
Right.
only original member.
Uh-huh.
Shane, our singer, has been in pretty close behind me, but he joined about a year after we first started. But yeah. I mean, I love playing original material. I've never really been in covers bands. I don't like being in covers bands. I find that a bit dull, to be honest.
Right.
I similar to how I see comics. Why if you can create your own things, why do you want to work on other people's stuff? Which is my sort of attitude to playing music as well. We've done. Well, this sounds all very impressive, but it's not really. It's complete. It's like vanity publishing. We've done 2 albums. Our last one is sort of due to the good old pandemic this year. Was the release of it was slightly truncated. We actually for this one we actually had a friend of mine who runs a very small independent record distribution company called Caroline True Records.
Right.
And he offered to distribute it for us. So it's very exciting to finally get our record in proper record shops, as opposed to, just as we did it with the first album, just kind of try and sell it online. I ended up just selling the album at cons,
Wow.
But
did it sell well at cons?
Sorry?
Did it sell well at Comic-Cons?
It did when I said I'd do a free sketch. Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a great deal. To be fair, though.
Yeah. It's basically forcing people to not even buy it. To basically that in their eyes, they're paying for a sketch and they're getting a free bit of vinyl.
Is it done on vinyl?
We did the original album on CD and vinyl. But this one, I said to the band, I said, let's just do it digitally and just do it on vinyl.
Right.
Because let's face it, the CD market is probably the least successful of all formats now. And okay, yes, it's more portable. I don't plan to sell this at cons, just because it's a bit of a ball ache, to be honest. So. And it's probably easier. Well, even though vinyl's bigger, it's probably easier to take literally 5 or 6 to a con when finally we are allowed to have them again. And not worry about selling them. If someone who really wants one, great, I'm quite happy to sell them. But rather than I was taking all these CDs, it's schlepping them around, and it was a pain, to be honest. So
on top of the comics that you're taking, or do you not take any comics with you to comic?
I don't really take comics to sell.
That's right. Yeah.
Because I don't really have. I mean, I could keep all the comic copies that sent, all sent of The Walking Dead, but to be honest, it's not. It's too much like hard work. I don't really like setting up a shop, which is
of course.
You want to do that's kind of cool, but no, obviously a lot of people make a living out of that, and all power to them. And I know a lot, obviously, independent creators, that is completely what they have to rely on, which is fine. But I just, now at my stage of career, I just like to do kind of just signings, shall we say?
Of course. I'm sure you get plenty of stuff to sign anyway, so you don't have to.
Plenty of that. But
so you don't bring anything to just get signed by other creators when you go either, or because you probably just know most of them well enough.
No, well, it's no. I mean, obviously, I know quite a few now. I mean, I've got. over the years, in terms of what I own, in terms of signed stuff, tends to be bits of original art.
Right,
And
yeah.
I've done half the stuff I have is basically swapped, with power vinyl. Half I have gone out and bought. And,
Right, yeah.
To sign, obviously, but if someone sat at a table and I bought a book off them, I'll say, "Oh, go on, then might as well sign it while you're there."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not my be all and end all. I'm not one of the. I do not keep signed stuff thinking of some sort of value to it or anything like that. I just,
because
I'll buy a copy because I like it.
Yeah, because whenever we do Comic Cons now, like we've got to take all our comics with us to sell, and then on top of that, I also got to bring a bunch of stuff that I want to get signed as well. So I'm bringing around so much stuff with me because I'm just like, because I can't not get myself signed when I go to a Comic Con, and then all the other stuff that we need to get signed as well. So yeah, so that we need to sell on top of that. But yeah, so it's it's the grind. We're on the grind. But
you're not one of those people that walk around with like a trolley.
No, I don't have a trolley, but like every now and again, it does make sense. Though I do think, this does make sense. But yeah,
there is one guy that I always see, especially at the lakes. He's he's a nice guy, but he literally walks around with a trolley, and he'll come up every time and shuffle through, the collection. Think, effort, really, but,
God.
collector's mentality. I'm kind of, sometimes I'll fall into that trap, that sort of trap of having to own it all, or collect it all, whatever it is, I can see that sort of, shall we say, psychological and say issue.
No, I it depends what it is. Like I just picked up the first compendium of Invincible just the other day, just because I don't like, but like the idea of going and getting every single individual issue would just be like hellish to track them all down and that kind of whole thing. But yeah, I do get it for like other things basically. But yeah.
I mean, just as an aside, for instance, I was very determined because I didn't get on to the. When Game of Thrones first started, I wasn't on any streaming services. I just had Freeview and that was it. So I started buying, the collections, the box sets. And then about halfway through Game of Thrones, we started. I had Netflix, I had Amazon Prime. So we could. Actually, we didn't. Actually, ironically, we didn't have we didn't have access to Game of Thrones, so it's a bad example to use. But there was access to Game of Thrones. We won't talk about that. But as the completers in me still had to buy the box sets regardless. I think the second to last season, I'd forced my poor wife to wait until I got the box set to watch it.
Oh, right. Okay, good.
She could have watched it, I think, around at her sister's because she had Now TV, because I think that's what it was on.
That's right, yeah.
And she was getting really annoyed that I wouldn't, because I was like, I'm going to get the box set next year. So I don't have to watch it this year. But so that's kind of, I appreciate that sort of mentality because I can get into that mentality, of owning it all or having a collection of a certain format or whatever.
Yeah, and you can't like.
Sorry, though, I'm going to say the more frustrating thing would be if you had half of Invincible as single issues, and then you had a compendium. That would be more frustrating.
But it's only one or the other.
One or the other, exactly.
Exactly. Okay, so one of the questions we had was we noticed like Frank Whiteley in an interview talked about how he was really inspired by the Bruins and Willie, the old is it DC Thompson comics, and we were wondering like if you have any other kind of like slightly kind of like obscure like inspirations that people wouldn't expect that you need to have.
Well, I'm very well, there's a couple of things which probably people might not see in my artwork, that's for sure. I mean, the thing with Frank,
Yeah,
you can see that in his artwork
you can
if you know.
absolutely see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
This is slightly more obscure because you can't really see it in my artwork. I was, I've always been really inspired by Asterix.
Oh,
Um,
really? Wow.
yeah, it was my first love, to be honest. When I first started out,
Yeah.
I remember my dad. Well, it's a story I tell quite often on interviews, but very briefly, there was a petrol station back in my childhood that ran a promotion that if you filled the car up enough, you got a free Asterix book. It was
Oh.
it was a special formatted one. It was the same format,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
slightly. I think it had the logo of whatever petrol station it was on, and so it was slightly tweaked. The
Yeah.
format, it was exactly the same, the sort of 48-page big, sort of format kind of thing. And yeah, I whatever. I think it sold 4 of them at the time. In 4 different ones. If you literally filled your car up enough times to collect the set. And it was Asterix the Gaul, Asterix the Gladiator, Asterix the Legionnaire, and the Asterix and the Big Fight. I always remember those 4. And that's where I fell in love with them and pestered my dad to always go back to the same petrol station.
Wow.
So, we could start saving for the next book or whatever.
Yeah.
I've continued my love for that character. And it sort of influenced me in a slightly roundabout way in terms of, even though obviously I don't draw in that style at all.
Yeah.
It was the first French comic book I ever read. Obviously, when I was young, didn't realise it was French. But which led eventually to my love for French comic books, bande dessinée, and also it also led to not an obsession, but how would you describe me always wanting, if you're going to draw something like a car, shall we say, draw a specific make of car, or at least research what a car looks like as opposed to drawing just on wheels,
Yeah.
And I think all that very much derived from my initial love of Asterix and the way Uderzo would, everything obviously apart from the cartoon characters, everything in it was immaculately researched and,
very like period specific and stuff like that.
Period specific. The horses had the correct harnesses on, etc. So the Romans had the correct armor, and all this sort of stuff. The villages, Rome looked as it should back in 50 BC. All that, and that's kind of what I got from European comics at the end of after many years. That's what I sort of took from European comics,
right?
Which was obviously started with Asterix. And I suppose the other thing that's really influenced me, and again, it's probably doesn't appear that much in my artwork, but it's just one of those things that I look at it enough that this stuff must just kind of be almost by osmosis sort of infuse into my artwork, and that is sort of 60s and 70s and primarily American illustration artwork, whether it's for magazines, book covers, all that sort of thing. Primarily actually magazines. I tend to gravitate more towards sort of magazine illustration, and obviously as the 70s, 60s progressed into the 70s, more into film poster artwork, things like that. But I just think those guys, top of the game, especially back in the 60s and 70s, they were getting more interested in design and abstraction as well. And back in the 40s and 50s, it was just mostly very, very representational. But by the time you got to the 60s and 70s, it was sort of it was still representational, but there were these sort of quirks coming in. You could be more adventurous, you can be more, experimental, things like that. And that's kind of my sweet spot I suppose, in terms of art in general. I love the design aspect to art, shall we say? Primarily comic book art, but I'm not massively into just representational artwork. I like there to be an element of design, an element of experimentation. But if it goes too much the other way, I kind of lose interest. I'm not saying I'm not saying it's not valid. I'm just saying for me personally, it's just not my not my wheelhouse. And so back in those days, those guys, the level of talent that they had to be able to just be technically penned or whatever was just phenomenal. But they added to that by having this incredible sense of design and that nice little slight element of experimentation. And they were loosening up as well, which I really liked. I prefer my stuff more loose. I like to see the lines in the artwork. I like to see the textures. I like to see almost the mistakes, that again, back in the 40s and 50s, it was a lot more precise. It was a lot more, photorealistic. The further you got in the decades, the less photorealistic it had to become,
interesting.
Well, primarily because of the invention of the camera, or obviously the cameras around in the 40s and 50s, but it was a lot more expensive to do photography and to print photography and everything. Obviously as the decades progressed, it got become more and more cheap, and therefore more people were using photography. So you didn't really need the artists to do representational stuff anymore. So those artists had to sort of, go up a notch and do stuff that's just more interesting, simple as something a camera can't do.
It's really interesting. So talking about movie posters in particular.
So again, the sweet spot for me for movie posters was probably mid-60s to probably mid-70s. There's one guy particular who is the master of it, a guy called Bob Peake, who is, to anyone that knows illustration, they're probably groaning now because it's a really obvious one. It's like someone really like, I don't know, Picasso or something like that. Fine art. It's really, can we be a bit less obvious? But the reason he's such a big name is because he was so good. You would know his work. If you look up Apocalypse Now, he did the film posters of that. He did the film poster to Excalibur. He did Star Trek The Motion Picture. He did My Fair Lady. He did Rollerball. So and just dozens, hundreds of others. When he got to the late 70s, he was using airbrush a lot more, and that's when I sort of didn't dislike him, but I kind of I wasn't into him as much as I was before that, because I find the airbrush to be a very lifeless tool, similar to painting on Photoshop and just using just the bog standard, fading tools and blends and everything like that. It's a bit too flat for me. Boy, could he use it well, but it just didn't interest me. I'm very lucky to own, I own 3 Bob Peakes. My pride and joy is actually the other Apocalypse Now film poster he painted. But I also got a prelim for Rollerball, which I prefer to the actual poster because it's all done in pastels. So there's a real element of getting it down quickly, which I love. But there's just this phenomenal sort of design sense to it all. as well. So that would be, what, 75, I think, when that movie came out. But yeah, so somebody like that. But he started off in magazine illustration, which I've got one of his magazine illustrations from the late 60s. Which is just, again, another prelim, but oh god, their prelims were like finished pieces of art. It's just something I've never considered. I just think, oh god, to do all that work just to show a client, almost, just for them to sort of go, oh, that'll do, right, do it better. And,
Wow. Well, I love it, because I'll have to see. So is this the other Apocalypse Now poster? Was that one that was released, or is that like a secret one?
No, the it's very similar in design, if you can think of it. But the official one was the bridge and all the sort of flames going up into Martin Sheen's face, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've got the boat. With an effect, the boat that obviously Martin Sheen's on through most of the film. Not so much flames going up, but a similar effect running up to Marlon Brando in reflected in.
Yeah, I think I know.
So
it
was released. It just wasn't as it wasn't as widely released as the other one. I know for a fact that Frank Darabont, the film director, owns the actual original, and you could probably add another 0 to the price of the official one, because that's the famous one. So probably worth hundreds of thousands. Just because it's Apocalypse Now and it's the poster.
So, I got really excited because Apocalypse Now is my favorite film of all time. So I thought you were going to say like, oh, you had like a secret, like non-used poster, and I was going to be like, oh, show it to me. Like,
right. Oh, okay. Well, that's still pretty cool. I've got a used poster.
I think that's still pretty cool. I'm gonna say I gotta get Apocalypse Now poster, just because, like, show my clout. You know what I mean? Show my credentials. That's a really good answer. I gotta say, that's really interesting. So Bob Peck, is that what his name is? Sorry.
Peake. Peak.
Cool.
There's a massive. I don't know if you can still get it. I'm not sure if it's out of print, but there's quite an expensive, massive book you can get on his career and paintings. And his son ran a Kickstarter thing a few years back to get his drawings, publish a book on his drawings, which I instantly signed up for. That's a beautiful thing as well. So he's got a few publications out there.
Cool.
But just Google the name. You'll see it all. It's quite phenomenal.
Well, I'm glad you told me about that, because I didn't, because it's obviously one of my favorite films, like one of the best film posters of all time, and I didn't even think like, oh, I wonder who drew that. You know what I mean? But like,
right. Yeah. I mean, he was sort of, he kind of, he lived right up until I think the early 2000s. He kind of stopped doing posters probably mid 80s, if that. I'm trying to think what I saw, what he would have done. Like I say, he did Excalibur, that was 80. He would have done a few after, I'm pretty sure. I think he kind of retired and just did commissions. But there was, then the 80s, a guy called Drew Struzan kind of took his mantle, shall we say. So if you see most Spielberg movies, for instance, the painted film posters are Drew Struzan, whether it's Back to the Future or E.T. or any of those. They're all Drew Struzan ones. Oh, he did a thing. He did The Thing as well. I do like Drew Struzan, but he's not. Unlike Bob Peake, who had a real style to him, Drew Struzan is incredibly photorealistic. he's basically got a bunch of, he's working from either photographs or models in the studio. Actually, primarily, I think he's working for photographs.
Right.
So, like, for instance, if you got Back to the Future, you've just got a very well painted, version of a Michael J. Fox, sort of publicity still kind of thing.
Yeah, it's still iconic, but it's not as kind of like it's
an
not
iconic,
feeling,
It's just lacks that life, and it lacks that sort of little, like I keep saying, element of design,
Right.
And you can kind of see, as much as I hate to say, you can kind of see the progress from that sort of visual excitement of those guys from the 70s, 60s and 70s, going into somebody like Drew Struzan, who by the end of it was just basically drawing, faces and bodies and not much else, which sort of goes into how film posters are now, which are just the dullest of dull, i.e., well, especially the ones that are the official, film posters, because it's basically the lead actor, big shot of his face. There might be a couple of other actors in it, as a whole, there's nothing exciting about that poster. It's just a very big commercial. Here's the actor. Here's who's in it.
I got you.
And that's how they've now become. So again, it's a real shame.
That's another fantastic, very, very well answered question there. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Yeah. Okay, so this is probably a question that you might have been asked before, but before you started, so your first big kind of like break in the comics was Judge Dredd for 2000 AD. So before that, like, kind of what were you doing that kind of like helped you get noticed by 2000 AD?
Well, I probably spent about 2 years trying to get in the comic book industry before I got in the comic book industry. I was in my when did I leave art college? I left art college, hang on, I always have to think about this. Didn't have a foundation course, 84, 85, so 85, 86, 87. Left art college, 87. Spent some time in London, trying to make it in a rock band, which brings it full circle back back to music, but obviously that didn't work out. I wasn't in London for that long. It was about 8 months. Then moved back to where my birthplace, which is Shrewsbury in Shropshire. Basically because everything else in London, just wasn't working out, and it was a kind of a last-ditch attempt, running out of money, sort of just doing kind of dead-end jobs with not much prospect, of just completely directionless. So moved home, thought about getting back into comic books as almost just on a whim. As soon as I started drawing again, I realised what I'd kind of been missing since my youth, and up until I was about 18, before I went and did my art foundation course, all I wanted to be was a comic book artist. So I had this sort of period from 18 up until, mid to late 20s of not doing or not wanting to be a comic book artist. So I spent pretty much two and a half, roughly that, sort of getting this portfolio and constantly, adding to it and revising it, and going to the conventions that were there in the late 80s. So, I mean, I was lucky because at the time comics were big news, and Marvel and DC especially could afford to send mostly, 3 or 4 editors a piece over to the UK cons, and there was only 2 in the country at the time. There was one in London and one in Glasgow, but they would send editors to
Sorry, terribly professional of me there. Sorry.
Very
Sorry about that. Sorry.
No worries.
Sorry. So continue.
So I'd go to those, and it's great because it saved me going over to the States or whatever. And and there were loads of British publishers as well, not just 2000 AD in Dread magazine, there were various other people, doing stuff. There was Tundra, there was A1 were doing, there was a book called A1, Deadline, all these different publications, publishers. There's a lot of stuff to hit each time. And I basically spent 2 years trying to do this. And then I was at Glasgow one year, and I had some 2000 AD work that I'd just sort of been doodling on before in my portfolio. And I took it to a show. Funny enough, I took it to show Alan Grant, who obviously wasn't an editor. I think he has been an editor, but not at the time anyway. And he liked what he saw, but obviously he couldn't offer me a job. He was doing Batman at the time, so he was a big, obviously a big name. And I sort of cheekily said, well, if they say, over at 2000 AD, if they like my stuff, can I say you'll do something with me? And he went, sure, like that, probably thinking that's not going to happen. Anyway, so I went over to 2000, well, it was Fleetway at the time, but 2000 AD Judge Dredd magazine. They liked what they saw, and they said, yeah, we like this. And I sort of went, Alan Grant will write me a story.
Wow.
And I don't know if that actually got me my first, sort of, it was just a one-off Dredd story, a 10-pager for the Dredd magazine. But Alan did actually write that story. It was the first thing I did was by Alan Grant. So, I'm sure Alan was just doing a load of stories for them, and they just took one of his scripts and said, "Is it all right if this new guy illustrates?" And he probably went, "Yeah, sure." What? I don't think there's any big sacrifice on anyone's behalf. But it got me my first job, and then straight after I did that Dredd thing, I did a tryout for Devil in War for 2000. That was for the Judge Dredd magazine at the time as well. But I didn't get it because Sean Phillips drew that first book, and since then Sean's become a really good friend of mine. But it was kind of funny, sort of. Not losing out to Sean, because Sean was obviously already a really established name. But then they gave me one of Sean's scraps, which was the second book of Judge Armitage, because Sean had done the first book. So it's kind of weird how we've become good friends, but our careers have sort of been quite intertwined right from literally the beginning of my career. Sean was already kind of quite a well-established professional. I mean, he'd been in the industry since his teens, so he'd been a jobbing comic book artist for well over a decade before I got in. We're the same age. I was just a lot later. And I haven't looked back since the Dredd magazine, to be honest. That was it. Armitage was pretty much 8 months to 9 months work. It felt like forever at the time, but that was it.
It's not only 15 years, is it? On a comic book.
Good point. Yes, 16. 16.
16. Sorry, my bad. My apologies. Sorry.
That's all right. But yes. Well, obviously, I didn't expect to be committed to one book for 16 years. I always remember saying to people before The Walking Dead, what I really wanted to do was an ongoing series, because I was really capable of doing something like that, just in terms of being, efficient, fast, whatever. I've always been that ever since I've started. I've never missed deadlines. I've always been on time. I generally tend to get my stuff in before, and I was already building up a reputation for being, one of the fastest artists in the business. And then, and then of course Walking Dead comes along, and I get my wish, but perhaps not for 16 years.
Well, it's
I was thinking perhaps an ongoing series for 4 or 5 years would be quite nice. And then go on to something else, but
wow. Well, that was one of the questions that we were going to ask later on, but I'll bump it up, because Robert Kirkman talked about how he would send you pages to start working on, and then he would go to bed and he would wake up in the morning and the finished pages would be sent over to him, because obviously of the time difference between the US and here. Is there anything particular about your process that makes you such a fast artist?
Well, I don't procrastinate, which I think is a big problem for a lot of artists. I just sit down and start. Simple as. I don't do thumbnails. I don't do any prelims, anything like that. I mean, don't publish a sketchbook by me, because there aren't any. It's as simple as that. Having said that, I am. But somebody else's idea, and well, it would have come out by now, unfortunately. But obviously, again, due to the pandemic, it's been put back. But a friend of mine suggested it, who works with BHP Comics and publisher in Glasgow, and we managed to get well, it wasn't just it was like ideas, and it was process stuff, which I had just about enough. A lifetime's work condensed into about 16 pages. But anyway, so that's it. I just get straight in. I can see, as soon as I read, especially with The Walking Dead, as soon as I read Robert's scripts, I could see instantly how to do it. I kept all the panel arrangements very simple, which is how I like comic books, to be honest. I don't like over complicated, fancy panel arrangements anyway, but it serves the purpose of doing it fast. And as soon as I finished a page, I'd put it away, so I didn't have to look at it again, because I knew if I started to review it again, I'd probably make changes, and because I wouldn't be happy with how that figure looks or how that head is. I mean, it's probably much to my eternal regret, because there's loads of covers, there's loads of interior pages which I look at now and go, oh God, if only I'd have gone back to that and did another hour or something and made it good. So there's a load of stuff I personally feel rather embarrassed about. I mean, one of the things I'd love to do, actually, with now the news is out that we're doing the colour version of The Walking Dead, is basically to do a variant cover of every single cover that I've done that I hate. So to do it good, to do a decent version, whether it's literally redrawing the cover exactly or doing something completely different. Now I've got the time to do something like that. I can. But anyway, I digress. So all those factors sort of puts me in that kind of position of being able to just sit there and do it. Oh, and also draw it small as well. I draw it second size up. It's slightly bigger than the comic. Right. But of course, just by the nature of shrinking it down,
So around about like A4, just a little bit bigger than A4 kind of size.
Yeah, roughly A4. Yeah, yeah. Well, an
Yeah.
American version of A4 because it's American version of A4
Oh,
slightly longer and
US
narrower.
standards. Yeah,
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 right, right.
yeah. Pretty much. Yeah,
Ah.
yeah. So I've got some rather thin pens.
Right. That's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, I do know a lot of artists do draw really small, and well, I know one artist that draws really, really small, and she was able to get a comic out really fast because I think of the small size as well.
Well, you just can't get the detail in that you know
Mm,
that you might be persuaded to do if
mm,
you draw it bigger. But
mm.
I mean, the advantage of drawing small is that you don't lose any lines. You know, once there's no you're not shrinking down. I mean, obviously, we're talking about artwork that's done, you know, physically, not digital. Obviously, because I do a lot of digital stuff now, but
Yeah,
that's a different process completely.
of course.
But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, when you're doing it, and The Walking Dead was always, this goes way back to our original conversation about collecting stuff. You know, I like everything to be nice and neat and boxed and everything. So I knew once I started doing Walking Dead, you know, on pen and paper and everything, by the time I got to doing digital artwork and I hadn't finished The Walking Dead, you know, I was still doing that. I wasn't going to suddenly go over to The Walking Dead and do it digitally, which might save even more time.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to complete The Walking Dead, you know, properly and make it as one sort of thing. So it always, all of it was, you know, physical. But
Interesting question.
I just found that. So if you shrunk it down, you scan it in, there's no shrinkage, you know, all your lines are there. You know, it makes you do very positive lines. I mean, probably my most favorite artist of all time is Alex Toth. And you look at his stuff and the simplicity of the stuff there is just phenomenal. You know, the choices he makes in terms of lines, there's not one line wasted or anything like that. And I'm sure he did his stuff big as well, which is even more phenomenal. But, you know, doing it small does give you that sort of, takes away the choice of whether you add extra lines, which is a good thing in the end. It really hones your artwork down to, you know, what is needed for that specific image.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because I see a lot of artists who do like really like their inks are kind of like incredibly like, I guess the word would be like noodles maybe, where they can like they've kind of like ages kind of like just like, you know, like doing a lot of things, and like I guess that's kind of like, you know, I guess it's like if you're wanting to kind of like I think that depending on the size as well, if you're working really big, then you probably can like you feel more obligated to have like tons of fine details in there. But
true, yeah, because especially if you've got the same pen or brush or whatever. Well, I tried, especially working, either actually digital or physical. What I try to do now is if I'm doing a bigger image or a cover of a thing, I try and use pens. If I'm working on the drawing board, I try and use thicker pens. Because if you're using the same pen, you do feel obliged, like you said, to noodle more because the line's the same thickness, but you know it's twice as big, so it just looks. So you will noodle. So yeah, I bought a really very expensive actually, but really nice thick ink pen a few years back. And it's great for doing really nice, big, sort of sweeping lines if you're doing a cover or a big head or something like that. And yeah, just trying to get the same, because I always remember looking back on my stuff and some of the, you know, the small stuff in The Walking Dead, some of the images, I think, what have I captured there that gives it so much life and it just looks so good? It's because the lines very simple and are thicker, and there's a little less detail, there's more, I suppose, just you're taking a chance with every single line because you could make a mistake and that's it. You know, when you're noodling, you can almost noodle your way out of a mistake. But you know, when you're just using one line to tell a story, that line has to be pretty spot on. So yeah, and that's in the end, that's what made me think. Well, if I just use thicker lines for bigger imagery, it almost will act the same, obviously, as those single images I really like in the the bog standard storytelling on those small bits of paper.
Yeah, because I find with my stuff, like I like to kind of like have the paneling be very like simplistic, like the way that you drew paneling. But then when something kind of happens outside of the ordinary, like then I like to change the paneling a little bit because it gives it more of a sense of kind of like it can, as you said, it can like if every page is kind of like like the paneling's really kind of like like expressive and stuff like that. It means that when the moments that are meant to be really impactful happen, they can't have as much impact because they look like every other page. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, yes, I know what you mean. Of course, make your panels, vary your panels or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not against people that do.
No, of course not. No, yeah.
Or anything like that. But at the end of the day, they have to work. And if you're just doing them just because you can, I think you're wasting your time because you're probably spending ages working out just your panels, the complexity of doing crazy panels. I did it once. I did it and it was on purpose. But I did. I don't know if you saw it. Rebellion earlier this year actually bought it out. It was Smash. It was like a tribute to the old Smash comic.
I think I flicked through some of the pages for that. It did really cool.
I did the Steel Claw.
yeah.
And it's written by Charlie Higson. To be honest, that's the reason I thought, oh, I'll do that. Famous person, But it was really good actually.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd ape the way they used to do the panels back in the 60s, which was that more crazy, there'd be round panels, there'd be like zigzag panels, people coming out of panels. So I did a bit of that, but that was very intentional. That was very sort of, for a specific style, shall we say, to evoke that sort of 60s, 70s British, especially British way of storytelling.
Right, yeah.
I find it quite ironic, actually, the British way of storytelling with those sort of panels. The panels the Brits use, especially if you see something like, anything like, I don't know, TV21 or the Frank Bellamy stuff, Dan Dare, anything like that. The panels were pretty crazy a lot of the time. It wasn't just standard, rectangular boxes, 6 of them a page or whatever. And whereas America, which were, everyone just thinks of, American comic books, especially in the 60s and 70s or whatever, at the same time period, to be the dynamic cousin to the British kind of staid and very undynamic comic books.
Right.
They were the ones that were using sort of more basic panels. There's a lot. Not many American comic book artists use that sort of crazy panel kind of arrangement. It's kind of fascinating. But they're the ones that are associated with dynamism. What was going on in the panel was important as opposed to the panel itself.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I hadn't noticed that about kind of like that kind of early British comics. Like my kind of like knowledge of British comics is more like 2000 AD, and then like kind of the Beano and stuff like that. That's my kind of like and obviously like the DC Thompson, Dudley Watkins and stuff.
All the War stuff, Commando and all that as well.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the most.
That was fairly standard. But
no,
it's interesting. I've only just thought of it literally as I've been talking. So
well, there you go then. Yeah, it's interesting.
There you go. So I could be completely wrong. Somebody could pull me up on this and go, "You're so wrong."
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to kind of like do some research then, I guess. Yeah. But no, that sounds really interesting though. I'll have to give that a look. Okay, yeah. So another question. I am a bit wary of time because you said you need to go at 1:15.
Yeah, we've got another 15 minutes.
Okay,
That's
cool, cool. Okay, so the other question we was going to ask was, uh, is there any of your kind of like early work that you're like kind of like a little bit embarrassed about, and vice versa? Is there any of your early work that you think like, oh, I'm really proud of that. I want someone to go and check. I wish people would go and like check it out, if you know what I mean.
Oh no, I'm embarrassed about all my early work. There's nothing I'd
Okay.
say check it out.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's not from an artwork point of view.
Mm-hmm.
No, God, when I became a professional, I always say I wouldn't have employed me, so somebody could see,
Yeah.
some sort of potential in there. I genuinely don't think I was ready for professional comic book publishing when I first got in. I mean, I took a professional attitude, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but I look back on the early stuff and go, God, there's so much bad drawing in there. What the
Mm-hmm.
hell? What is that? And
Mm-hmm.
I look. I mean, yeah. I mean, the good thing. It's a positive thing though, because people always ask, "What's the best thing you've drawn?" And you go, "Well, what? Hopefully, I'll do tomorrow."
Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
if I'm looking back on my stuff from a couple of years ago and going, "Oh God," hopefully that's showing that I've progressed
Mm-hmm.
in my head anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the good thing, actually, the funny thing, the good thing about doing this, The Walking Dead in color, is Dave McCaig, the genius who's been coloring it all.
Mm-hmm.
He's secretly been doodling away on it for the last 3 or 4 years. That
Mm-hmm.
and obviously we haven't said anything until recently.
Mm-hmm.
But every time he's done an issue, he sends it to me and Robert, and we all the time. I don't think I've ever brought him up on anything. I might brought him up on something like
Mm-hmm.
this should be this color. We've always imagined it to be this
Yeah.
color, but
Uh-huh.
it's interesting reviewing all my stuff again. Because literally we've gone right back from the beginning.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just look at it and go, "Oh God, you had to color that terrible picture, you poor
Uh-huh.
man."
Uh-huh.
And I'm still looking at stuff, and he's up to can't remember what issue number. He's close to 100 now.
Wow.
So yeah, and I'm still looking at those, going, "Oh God, why?" I still didn't know how to draw something,
Mm-hmm.
some technical aspect to the body or whatever.
Right.
It's something I think I'll never do that
Mm-hmm.
again
Mm-hmm.
until I see it crop up the day
Mm-hmm.
before in some artwork. But
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, nothing. There is honestly nothing. I would sort of go and look at that. I mean,
Yeah.
the only thing I'm still proud of is White Death,
Mm-hmm.
way back, because not because obviously I still look at the artwork to that and go, because it's 20 years old or whatever. But I'm proud of it because it's the first time I ever did something creator owned, and it's the most experimental I've ever got, because I did it charcoal and chalk on grey paper.
Mm-hmm.
So the process of it was radically different.
Yeah.
So I'll always point people to that and
Mm-hmm.
say, yeah, I did that. I'm pleased. I'm proud of it. I'm not necessarily pleased with it, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
proud of it.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I
That's
think
interesting.
that's
Yeah.
slightly different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. That's cool. That sounds really interesting. The idea of I've never thought of doing a comic with charcoal before, so that's
Neither
something.
did I
Yeah, that's
until
something.
neither did
Yeah.
I until me and Robbie Morrison, the writer, came up with it.
Yeah.
Ironically, we're working together again finally, because
Mm.
Robbie and I are friends.
Mhm.
And he coincidentally happens to, he moved up to Shrewsbury about 6 years ago.
Uh-huh.
So inevitable we'd sort of work eventually on something.
Uh-huh.
But we're doing a book called Heretic, which is set in the 16th century
Mhm.
uh, Spanish Inquisition times in Antwerp, in
Mhm.
Belgium.
Mhm.
And I'm doing it all digitally, but
Mhm.
it's funny. I'm not using the traditional ink tools on Clip
Mhm.
Studio. I'm
Mhm.
using sort of pencil tools,
All right.
primarily because because it's historical. It gives it more of an earthiness, more of a textural feel.
Mhm. Mhm.
I find it's quite interesting that it's only ever been with Robbie that I've gone embrace something a bit more experimental.
Right.
You know,
Right.
with White
Yeah.
Death and now Heretic.
Yeah.
Both of those books, I've gone in a more loose, kind of pencily way on both. I
Mhm.
find that I've never really thought about that until now.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad we're asking questions, a bit different questions, kind of thing. Yeah. So I guess because like you're gonna have to head off soon, so I guess we'll say the last question. We already know the answer to this because you were very generous to come and speak to our comics course up at Pisa Uni back in like March, I think it was.
Yes,
Uh,
before we all couldn't speak to
yeah,
each other.
yeah, millions of years ago. It feels like now.
Yeah.
We asked you. This is a staple of this segment is whether your character can do a kickflip. So I guess the question is, could Rick Grimes do a kickflip on a skateboard?
I remember this question, but I can't remember my answer. Funny enough,
Yeah,
I, I, I think Michonne could.
Michonne. Okay, that's cool.
Michonne
Yeah,
could
yeah,
certainly do a kickflip.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. Well, it depends which Rick Grimes. Certainly, Rick Grimes in the last since Negan broke his leg, certainly would be able to do a kickflip,
Might
would he?
struggle there. Might struggle there.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
might have got up to a decent level of fitness to do a kickflip, but
Uh-huh,
I think
uh-huh.
Sean would have done the best kickflips, wouldn't she?
That would have been really cool to see. I think that would have been great to see. And if there's ever a kind of, if any kind of, because obviously you did Negan Lives recently, uh,
Yes.
but yeah, the answer you gave back when we asked you the question before, you said that Carl Grimes could.
Oh, really? Did I?
Yeah, that's what you said. You said that
Okay.
he could definitely do a kickflip, which is
Obviously,
obviously
I
great.
wasn't thinking of.
Yeah.
Obviously, I wasn't thinking of Michonne.
Well, there we go. So that's
Let me
two.
erase. Let me erase that answer. I think Michonne
Okay,
definitely
Michonne.
do one. Yeah,
Okay, well there we
yeah.
go then. That's cool. That's cool.
I'll
I
give
like
you a
that.
different answer next time.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure to ask you again. We'll see if the answer changes as well. I want to
Yeah.
obviously asking Robert Kirkman. That'll be also be interesting to hear what he thinks as well. Find out his answer for that question. Um, and yeah, so and then I guess just to wrap things up, what are you working on at the moment that you'd like to plug? Other than is there anything else other than the comic that you're doing with Robbie Morrison?
No, that's kind of it for the minute.
Mm.
A lot of it, I'm still doing a few bits and pieces here that are sort of cropping up, but most of that's charity work
Yeah.
or work for my two favourite comic festivals or conventions, whatever. One which my most favourite, which is the Lakes, I'm doing quite a few things for, and then doing something for Thought Bubble as well, which I love.
Mm.
But there is something way down. Well, not way down the line. There is something else
Yeah.
that's in the pipeline. I'm working with another writer who uh, well, how do I say this? He's not famous actually, not in this country anyway, or the States, but
Mm.
it's kind of weird how we've sort of hooked up to do this project, which was birthed from a very sort of kernel of an idea from me, actually,
Mm.
something
Mm.
I really wanted to do about something.
Mm.
I'm being obviously very canny about this, but
Yeah.
because well, we haven't got officially a publisher for it yet. Having said that, we haven't got a publisher for Heretic yet, but
Yeah.
yeah, this is so early doors. I know he's writing it, so I'm going to be very excited to see it when he's done it. But
Yeah.
it's quite exciting because it's based on an idea of mine. I got this feeling that this guy is completely on the right wavelength, because that's half the battle, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you've got the idea, it's finding the right, obviously it's a bit obvious to say, isn't it, the right person for the job. And it might not necessarily be the most famous writer in the world, you know, and I've certainly got to that point, which is not using the most famous writer in the world. So, but I'd rather use someone who's obviously completely on the same page as I am with it, than somebody much more famous who might write something completely different, and then it ends up me, and then I end up drawing something I don't really want to draw. So, so that'll be for next year, hopefully. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
A little tease,
I'll be doing a load more variant covers, a lot more. Because there's a lot of crap covers I've drawn and things from Walking Dead. So you'll see a lot of those.
Cool. Well, fantastic. That's all the questions that we had. Well, we had a couple more other ones, but I understand that you're a little bit pressed for time now. So
that's all right. No worries. No, that's good. I enjoyed that. Fantastic.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Sorry about the technical difficulties beforehand.
Oh, don't worry about it. Well, like I said, I was late, so it's not. We did it. That was the main thing.
I think it went well. Yeah, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, well, just let me know when you're going to run it and stuff. That would be cool.
We will do. Yeah, and would you be like happy to tweet it out or something? Or, like...
Yeah, absolutely, totally.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just
thank you so
give
much.
me the details, and I will do that. No worries. Okay.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
And you. Cheers, Tom.
Cheers.
Bye then.
Bye. Bye.